So one of the claims that I came across in my research with the Incans were, did they create a socialist paradise? Or at least was the empire socialist? And from my research, when I gathered, the short answer is no. But there are a lot of elements that could give credence to that thought. We have a sip here. Ah yes, good, golden. The empire of the Incas still operated as an empire, but the structure of society was so different from a lot of the other European societies at the time. So let me give you an idea. When a man and a woman were married, they were then given a plot of land, typically a farm somewhere in the empire, and they were given the task, therefore, of having to farm the land. They were also given a couple of either alpaca or llamas in order to help with the work, the labor. It would also provide them manure, it would also provide them with wool, and that way they would be able to work the land, and they would feed themselves, and whatever surplus, they would hand it back to the community. So there are elements of socialism in there. And one of the interesting things I think that pops up a lot of the time in regard to the Incas is because they didn't have a monetary system, well, how did they measure their taxes, right? Because if there's one thing you can't avoid in life, it's taxes. Sometimes you can avoid death. It'll catch up to you eventually, but you can't avoid taxes no matter where you go. And this was the same even in a society with no monetary system, because the Incas measured their taxes in a different way. They measured it via labor, something that actually would pop up in a lot of socialist and communist societies later as well, would be these labor quotas in order to benefit the society as a whole. Somebody has to do the work. And this goes back even all the way back to Greek times, where they thought, oh, well, with a socialist society, who's going to do the labor? Well, it's either going to be the slaves, or it's going to be somebody that has to be coerced to do the labor, or else nobody's going to have an incentive to do anything. And the same applied here. Every single year, the men were given a quota of labor hours that they had to do in order to sufficiently pay their dues to the empire. Now that could be labor in terms of road building, which the Incans, I should say, pre-Peruvian, were excellent at, or they were building parts of the imperial towns, like they were helping develop, the city of Cusco, or different areas of the empire in order to connect everything around. Or they were fighting as soldiers in order to help with the influence. Now, there was only about 2 kings within the Peruvian hierarchy, I guess you could say in the royal hierarchy, the royal line, that really expanded aggressively the borders of the Incan Empire. And after the second one died, the second most, because they were back to back, the next 6 were really relatively chill, all the way up until the fall of the Incan Empire with the coming of Pizarro. And it's just a fascinating idea to think that in a society without any monetary system, that the utilization of labor as a form of tax worked so well for them, right? That every single year, if it wasn't the harvest, because the harvest was very important, you had to stay home, you had to gather your wheat, or you had to gather whatever crops you had in order to not only feed yourself, but the rest of the empire, you would then be redirected and say, hey, you know what? You need to pay your taxes. We're going to take you for 3 months. We're going to stick you out in the road, and you're going to go build a road for us, or you're going to go build a town for us. And that was one of the ways that the Incans, in their own ingenious way, were able to build their empire so well, and be able to build their cities so well too. Because when you think about it, it's like, well, how does any ancient marvel come about? Well, it was typically on the backs of a lot of people. But the fact that this was on the backs of the civilians through taxes is novel and interesting. And although they weren't a pure socialist state, because it was, after all, an empire, there was the Sapa Inca, there was the emperor, who was part of the ruling class and therefore exempt from the labor, and was the one that was telling everybody what to do, right? The ruling class did happen. There was a hierarchy, there was a division of labor and also of expectation. But at the same time, there was a tremendous efficiency within the empire that allowed them to be remarkable in their own way, despite having the drawbacks of not having the wheel or other technologies. And it really gives a lot of thought to everything that they were able to accomplish in their time. I mean, we're talking about possibly the biggest empire in terms of land and people prior to the Spanish and the rest of Europe coming to the New World. So remarkable stuff to think of, and certainly one I would suggest if you guys are interested to do some further research into it. But to conclude, was the Incans a socialist paradise or even a socialist empire? No, it was still an empire with a hierarchy and a very specific leader, but their socialist tendencies did give them means to how they were able to accomplish so much and in the way that they did.